Some men come home to a quiet house, and a wife who asks how their day was. I came home to find my grandson curled up on the bathroom floor, too weak to lift his own head, and a woman I'd married 18 months earlier standing in the doorway telling me he was just being sensitive again. Let me back up, sweetheart, because you're going to want the whole thing. My name is Walter Briggs. I'm 67 years old. I spent 38 years as a claims investigator for Continental Mutual Insurance out of Columbus, Ohio, before I retired. My whole career was built on one skill: reading a story somebody tells you and figuring out which parts are true. I was good at it. Good enough that they kept me 2 years past retirement age, because nobody else in the regional office could spot a staged accident faster than I could. Funny thing is, all those years reading strangers, and I couldn't read the woman sleeping next to me. Welcome back, folks. Grab your coffee, because this one's going to take a while, and I promise you, by the end, you'll understand exactly why they call this channel what they do. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and tell me in the comments where you're joining me from tonight. I love hearing it. My daughter Marianne passed 6 years ago. Aneurysm, no warning, 34 years old, gone on a Tuesday afternoon while she was folding laundry. Her husband wasn't built for what came after. He tried, I'll give him that, but 2 years in he packed a bag and told me he needed space to figure things out, and the space he found was somewhere in Arizona that didn't include phone calls. So it was me and my grandson Dylan. Just the two of us, in the house I'd raised Marianne in, on Larchmont Avenue in a quiet part of Columbus where the maple trees were older than most of the marriages on the block. Dylan was 6 when it started being just us. He liked dinosaurs the way some kids like a religion: total, unshakable devotion, correcting me every time I mispronounced a name. I couldn't have cared less about getting right, because the look on his face when he corrected me was worth every syllable I fumbled. I made his lunches. I coached his little league team, badly. I was 61 years old raising a second grader, and somehow it was the best 4 years of my life since Marianne was small herself. Then Denise came along. I met her at my cardiologist's office, if you can believe that she was the office manager. Sharp, funny, always had a joke ready for the nervous old men in the waiting room. She asked about my late wife's photo in my wallet, and I told her about Marianne, and she cried a little, right there in the waiting room, like she'd known her. When I finally introduced her to Dylan, she got down on one knee. I remember this so clearly, and she said, "Your grandpa tells me you're the smartest 10-year-old in Ohio." Dylan looked at her dead serious and said, "I'm the smartest 10-year-old in Franklin County. I haven't met the rest of Ohio yet." She laughed so hard she had to sit down. I thought, this is it. This is what we needed. We got married 11 months later, in my backyard, under the maple tree Marianne used to climb as a girl. I told myself Dylan needed a mother figure. I told myself I wasn't just a lonely old man grateful for company. I told myself I'd spent 4 decades sniffing out liars for a living, and there was no way in hell I'd married one. Here's what 38 years in claims work teaches you. The biggest losses never come with sirens. They come quiet. A number that's off by a little too much to be a coincidence. A witness who remembers details a little too well. You don't catch it because you're not looking, and you're not looking because everything on paper checks out. My paper checked out: beautiful, nice house, good school. A wife who packed Dylan's lunch with a note every single morning I saw those notes: sweetheart, little hearts drawn in ballpoint pen, have a great day, buddy. I was in Pittsburgh in the fall, 3 days at a regional adjusters conference I'd agreed to speak at even in retirement, when Dylan's teacher, Mrs. Holloway, emailed me directly instead of Denise. Said Dylan had fallen asleep at his desk twice that week and seemed unusually foggy, and asked if he was sleeping all right at home. I forwarded it to Denise. She wrote back, "Already on it. He's got a cold, poor thing. Don't worry your head about it. Enjoy your conference." I believed her. I was in Cleveland in November when she texted me a photo of Dylan with a bandage on his elbow. "Fell off his bike, drama king. He's fine, I promise." I believed that too. I was so busy believing my own wife that I stopped doing the one thing I'd built a whole career on: checking the story against the facts. It was a Thursday in early March, when my flight back from a claims seminar in Indianapolis got moved up 6 hours because the conference wrapped early and I saw no reason to sit in an airport bar by myself. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to surprise the two of them. I'd found a little dinosaur, a hand-carved wooden triceratops from a shop by the convention center, the kind of thing Dylan would have talked about for a month. It felt like nothing, buying it. I wish now I'd bought it sooner. I pulled onto Larchmont Avenue a little after 10 p.m., porch light on, everything dark and still behind it. Normal, I thought. Good. I let myself in through the side door like always, set my bag by the stairs, and walked toward the bathroom because I could hear water running and figured Dylan was up brushing his teeth too late again. I pushed the door open, and my whole chest went cold. He was on the floor, half against the tub, his pajama shirt soaked through where he must have tried to splash water on his own face. His eyes were open just barely, unfocused, his lips a color I'd only ever seen on insurance photographs of the worst kind of accident. I dropped down so fast my knees hit the tile hard enough to bruise. Dylan, buddy, look at Grandpa. Look at me. His breathing was there, but it was slow and shallow and wrong in a way that every instinct in my body recognized even though my mind refused to catch up. I heard her come down the hallway behind me, unhurried. He's fine, Denise said. He gets these little episodes. Anxiety, probably. I gave him something to calm him down earlier. I looked up at her. She was in her robe, arms crossed, wearing the particular expression of a woman mildly inconvenienced by a delayed flight, not a woman looking at an unconscious 10-year-old on a bathroom floor. Something in me, 38 years of reading liars across a claims desk, went very still and very cold at the same time. He's not having an episode, I said. Something is wrong with him. Walter, don't make this into a hole. I was already dialing 911, my hands steadier than I expected, my voice the same flat, procedural tone I used to use, closing out a fraud file. The paramedics were there in under 10 minutes. Two of them, and the one who came through the door first, a woman, maybe 50, silver hair pulled back tight, stopped cold, the second she crossed the threshold, and saw Dylan on the floor. She looked at him, she looked at the bathroom, she looked at Denise standing in the hallway, and I watched something move across her face that I recognized instantly, because I'd seen it 100 times across a conference table when an adjuster finally matched two files that were supposed to be unrelated. Recognition, colliding hard with something like dread. Her name tag said Castillo. She worked on Dylan fast, efficient, calling out numbers to her partner in a voice that stayed level even as her hands moved quick. I stood there holding a wooden triceratops like a fool, completely useless in my own house. Then she stood up, looked straight at me, and said quiet enough that Denise couldn't hear, "Sir, can I talk to you in the kitchen for a second?" That sentence has never once in the history of the world been followed by good news. I followed her. She pulled the kitchen door most of the way shut. "Sir, were you traveling tonight?" "I was in Indianapolis. Got back early." "Why do you ask?" She looked at me a long moment, the way you look at a man when you're deciding how much of the truth he can carry standing up. "I've been to this address before," she said. "Back in October. Little boy. Unresponsive. We found elevated levels of a sedative in his system that shouldn't have been anywhere near a 10-year-old. The woman here at the time said she was his stepmother, said the boy's grandfather, I assume, was traveling and unreachable. She said the boy had a history of taking things out of the medicine cabinet. Behavioral issue, she called it. Very calm about it. Very specific. The kitchen went dead quiet around me. "We filed with Children's Services," Castillo said. "Standard when a minor's involved. You didn't know about any of this." It wasn't a question. She could see the answer on my face before I said a word. "No," I said. "I did not know about any of this." I set that wooden dinosaur down on the counter so gently it made no sound at all, and something in my chest that had been holding steady for 18 months, finally, quietly, broke. I rode with Dylan in the ambulance. Denise followed in her own car. Somewhere in those 14 minutes to Riverside Methodist, sitting next to my grandson with an oxygen mask fogging up over his small face, I made a decision the same way. I'd made 1,000 decisions across 38 years of claims work. You do not confront a liar with your feelings. Feelings get you nothing except a reputation for being unstable, and unstable men lose custody of little boys. What gets you everything is documentation, dates, times, signatures. Every piece of the story laid out so clean that nobody in a courtroom can argue with it. Denise thought she'd married a soft old widower who wouldn't know how to fight back. She forgot what I did for a living for 38 years was catch people exactly like her. I held Dylan's hand in both of mine and started building the file in my head before we'd even reached the hospital doors. The waiting room at Riverside Methodist at 1 in the morning is its own particular kind of purgatory. Those chairs that never let your back settle, a vending machine humming somewhere down the hall, a television bolted to the wall playing an infomercial with the sound turned all the way down. I sat there in my travel clothes, still smelling like airport coffee and recycled cabin air, and I pulled out my phone and logged into the family insurance portal the way I'd logged into 1,000 claimants' files over the years. Except this time the claimant was my own house. I want you to understand something. Whoever's listening tonight, I spent 38 years teaching younger adjusters that you audit everything. That trust is not a substitute for a paper trail. And I had gone 18 months without once checking my own family's medical claims because I thought home was the one file I'd never need to open. That was the worst mistake of my career, and I didn't even make it at work. There it was, right there on the screen in that blue hospital light. 2 emergency visits in the past 5 months, both on dates I could check against my own travel calendar without even trying because I already knew. A prescription for a sedative, filled under Dylan's name, on my insurance, from a walk-in clinic across town I had never once heard of, not from Dr. Weller, who'd known Dylan since he was 7 and would have called me the second something looked wrong. Denise hadn't used our doctor because our doctor would have asked questions. She'd found a stranger instead, paid the copay with my card, and driven home to make dinner like it was any other Thursday. Every seminar I traveled to, every 3-day trip I told myself I'd earned after 38 years of work, had paid for the very system she built to do this to my grandson under my own roof. Denise walked through those sliding doors at 10 past 2 in the morning. She'd changed clothes, light makeup, hair brushed, like a woman arriving for brunch rather than a hospital in the middle of the night. She sat beside me and put a hand on my arm. "How is he?" Soft voice, concerned eyes. I didn't answer right away. "Walter." She squeezed my arm gently. "You know how sensitive he can get. All that dinosaur trivia, and no real friends his age kids like that get anxious. It's not your fault. 10 years old, and I know exactly how he gets. He gets excited enough about the Cretaceous period to correct a paleontologist on television. He organizes his action figures by scientific classification. That's how he gets." "The paramedic," I said. "Easy, even." She said some things back there that concerned me. I watched her hands, not her face. 38 years teaches you faces are for other people. Hands don't know how to perform. Her fingers tightened on my arm, just barely, gone in a quarter second. "What things?" Said she recognized the address. Figured she had us confused with another call. I shrugged, watching her exhale, watching her whole body settle back into the chair, satisfied, safe. That's the tell every liar gives you eventually the moment they decide they've gotten away with it. A doctor came out around 3:30, a young man, tired eyes, name badge reading Okafor. "Mr. Briggs, your grandson is stable. We're keeping him overnight for observation." He paused, choosing his words with care. "We found a sedative in his bloodstream at a level well beyond anything appropriate for a boy his size." This wasn't accidental exposure. Denise made a sound beside me, distressed, a half second too rehearsed. "Oh my God, he must have gotten into something in the bathroom cabinet. I've told him 100. We're required to report this to Children's Services, Doctor," Okafor said, flat, over her. "Standard protocol. A caseworker will follow up." "Of course," I said. "Whatever you need." I felt Denise go rigid in the chair beside me. She left at 4:45, said she needed to rest, kissed my cheek at the door like nothing in the world had shifted between us. I watched her walk to her car through the waiting room window, and the second her taillights disappeared down the road, I called my old colleague Ron Petrosky, who'd handled fraud investigations with me for 2 decades before he went into private consulting. "Ron, I need every business travel record I've got for the last 2 years, dated, verified, printed on letterhead, if you can manage it. Done by 9, he said. And he didn't ask a single unnecessary question, because that's the kind of man Ron is. Then I called my attorney, Doug Feinberg, at his home number, because we'd been friends since before either of us had gray hair. Walter, it's 4 in the morning. I know. I need a family law recommendation, somebody who's handled children's services cases, today. A long pause. How bad, Walt? I'll tell you in person. I'll have a name for you by 8. At 9:30, they let me back into Dylan's room. He was propped up against the pillows, an IV taped into the back of his small hand, cartoons playing that he wasn't really watching. When he saw me in the doorway, his whole face changed. That particular child's expression that's half relief and half trying not to cry in front of Grandpa. Papa. I crossed that room in about 3 steps and held him a long time without saying anything at all. When I finally pulled back, I studied his face careful. Tired eyes. Something behind them that a 10-year-old should never have to carry. Hey, buddy. How you feeling? My head's foggy. He picked at the edge of his hospital bracelet. Is Denise here? The way he asked it, not hopeful, not missing her, just checking, the way you'd check a weather report before deciding whether to go outside. A 10-year-old, running a threat assessment on his own house. No, I told him. Just us right now. His shoulders dropped. Visible, immediate. I saw it happen. I will never forget seeing it happen. Dylan. I kept my voice light. Can I ask you something? He nodded. When I'm traveling, what's it like at home? He got very quiet, looking down at that bracelet. Then, in the smallest voice I ever heard come out of that boy, she gives me the calm down juice sometimes. When her friends come over to play cards. The calm down juice, I repeated, careful, level. Yeah. He looked up at me with the plain, guileless eyes of a child who has no idea how devastating his own words are. She says it helps me not be so hyper for her friends. But Papa, I don't like it. It makes everything feel far away, like I'm underwater, and everybody's talking from the other side of the glass. I held it together in that room by something close to force of will. Okay, buddy. I tucked his hair back off his forehead. You did nothing wrong here. You hear me? Nothing at all. He nodded, still watching me that particular way kids do when they're deciding whether the adults in the room have finally caught up to what they've known for months. The caseworker, a woman named Patrice Odom, met me in the hallway a little before 11, direct, unhurried, the kind of professional who's heard every version of every excuse and stopped being surprised by any of them years ago. I handed her the folder Ron had put together: travel records, letterhead verified, every date accounted for, insurance printouts, every claim, every prescription, every emergency visit mapped straight against my absences, the walk-in clinic records, a handwritten timeline I'd built at 5 that morning over a vending machine coffee bad enough to strip paint. She went through every page without a word. Mr. Briggs, she finally said, this is about as thorough as I've ever seen from a family member. I spent 38 years building files for a living, I told her. I know what one's supposed to look like. She looked up at me over the folder. Combined with Dylan's statement this morning and the second paramedic report triggering mandatory escalation, this becomes a priority case as of right now. We're moving today. Today, I said, and nodded, keeping my face level, professional, while something cold and exact locked into place inside my chest, the way a claim finally closes clean after months of somebody else's lies. I drove home to shower and change while Dylan slept, and I sat in my driveway afterward with 2 cups of real coffee, dark roast from the little place on High Street Dylan always begged to stop at because they let him pick his own straw color, and a folder on the passenger seat that represented the most focused 36 hours of my life since Marianne's funeral. My phone buzzed. Doug. Walt. Karen Ellison's expecting you at 9:30. Best family attorney in Franklin County. Handled a dozen children's services cases this year alone. Don't be late. I won't. Karen Ellison's office sat above a bakery downtown, and she reviewed my folder for a solid 10 minutes without saying a single word. Glasses pushed up into gray-streaked hair, the calm, unhurried energy of a woman who'd seen the worst version of families and knew exactly which lever to pull. Walk me through the travel dates, she said. I did. Every trip, every claim, every prescription, mapped clean against every one of my absences. She never did this while you were home, Karen said. Not once. Every incident, October, January, late February, I was in Cleveland, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh. And the boy's statement, I told her. Calm down, Juice. Underwater, talking from the other side of the glass. Karen set her glasses down on the desk. Mr. Briggs, I've practiced family law for 22 years. Judges in this county do not take child endangerment lightly, and with this level of documentation, the boy's recorded statement, and a second official report triggering mandatory review, we can have an emergency protective order signed before this afternoon. Before this afternoon, I repeated. Before this afternoon, she said, and picked up her pen. Then we get your grandson's life back. I want to tell you, walking out of that office felt like something out of a movie. It didn't. It felt like standing at the tail end of a very long conveyor belt, watching every piece finally lock into place the way it was designed to, and feeling nothing yet, except the specific hollow exhaustion of a 6-7-year-old man who'd been running on nothing but discipline for the better part of 2 days. The feeling would come later. Dylan came first. Back at Riverside Methodist, he was sitting up eating a cup of orange sherbet with the deep, focused seriousness of a boy who had opinions about sherbet consistency. Papa, this one's got ice crystals in it. It's basically ruined. There he is. I sat on the edge of his bed and looked at him a long moment. 10 years old. Lost his mother before he had a real memory of her face. Spent the better part of a year being quietly, deliberately harmed by a woman I'd brought into his house myself. And here he was, filing a formal complaint about sherbet texture. Kids survive things that would flatten a grown man, and then they ask for a better spoon. When do I get to go home? He asked. This afternoon, I told him. Is Denise going to be there? No, I said. She is not going to be there, not ever again. He studied my face a long moment, looking for the grown-up truth underneath the grown-up words, and whatever he found there must have satisfied him, because he went back to his sherbet and said, Okay. Can we get pizza from Massey's tonight? Massey's, on Indianola, his mother's favorite place growing up, the kind of thing that must live somewhere down in the blood. Whatever you want, buddy, I told him, and I meant every word of it more than I'd meant anything in a long time. A little before noon, Patrice Odom called. Mr. Briggs, the judge signed the emergency order about 20 minutes ago. Denise is barred from the property, 0 contact with Dylan, effective immediately. Police are moving on a formal questioning for felony child endangerment, and given the medical evidence, they're not waiting around. Do you happen to know where she is right now? Here's the thing, about 18 months of marriage, you learn people's rhythms, whether you mean to or not. I knew that every Thursday, without fail, Denise and her book club, a rotating group of 6 women from the neighborhood who I'd never once seen open an actual book, met for lunch at the Whitmore Room downtown. Same table by the window, same reservation, same performance for each other. She'd texted me that morning at 8:40. Heading to lunch with the girls. Keep me posted on my boy. Love you. Signed with a little heart. I hadn't answered. Yes, I told Patrice. I know exactly where she is, and if you go now, she'll have a full audience. Picture the Whitmore Room at 1:45 on a Thursday afternoon, white tablecloths, warm light, the particular hush of a restaurant full of people quietly performing their lives for one another over wine they'll swear they only have on special occasions. Denise's table sat by the window, 6 women, glasses already half empty, and she was mid-story, head thrown back in that specific laugh she used when she wanted the whole room to notice how well she was handling things, probably telling them, I'd guess, about her poor, anxious stepson and the toll it took on a devoted stepmother. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. 2 Columbus police officers and Patrice Odom walked through that door at 12:51 p.m. And the room didn't stop all at once, so much as it slowed, table by table. In that particular way, a room goes quiet when everybody senses something significant and nobody wants to be caught staring. They walked straight to the window table. Patrice set the protective order and the felony warrant down on the white cloth, right beside Denise's wine glass. Denise Briggs, I'm Patrice Odom, Franklin County Children's Services. These officers need to speak with you. Denise looked at the papers, then at the officers, then at 5 women who had gone completely, perfectly silent around her. "This is a mistake," she said, using the voice she'd used on teachers and doctors and one very trusting old man for 18 months. "I don't know what my husband's told you, but he doesn't know the whole picture." "Ma'am, please stand up," the officer said, quiet, final. She looked left, then right, the way people do when they're calculating whether there's any version of this scene they can still talk their way out of. There wasn't. The handcuffs went on in full view of that window table, the tables beside it, the bar, the entire Thursday lunch crowd of the Whitmore room, and every one of those 5 women she'd chosen over a 10-year-old boy who only ever wanted his grandfather to come home, sat frozen in their seats. Not one of them stood up. I changed the locks at 2 that afternoon, canceled her cards by 2:15, pulled her name off Dylan's school records by 2:30, off the insurance by 2:45, off every account tied to that house by 3:15. Methodical, one item at a time. The same way I used to close out a file once the fraud was proven and there was nothing left to argue. Dylan came home at 4:30, still wearing his hospital bracelet because he'd decided it made him look like he'd survived something important, which I suppose he had. He walked through the front door, stood in the entryway a second like he was checking whether the air itself had changed, and then dropped his backpack in the exact spot by the stairs that used to make Denise furious. The spot I'd never once asked him to move it from. "It smells different in here," he said. "Good different, or bad different?" I asked. He thought about it with real seriousness, the way he thought about everything. "Like when you open all the windows after winter," he said. "Yeah, buddy," I told him. Exactly like that. The pizza from Massey's showed up at 6:30, and we ate it sitting on the living room floor because Dylan wanted to watch a documentary about the Cretaceous extinction, and I had exactly 0 objections in the world. He fell asleep against my arm around 8:15, real sleep. The deep, unmedicated kind, a boy with nothing left to fear inside his own walls. I didn't move for a long while. I just sat there, in a house that had finally, after 18 months, let out a breath it had been holding. Denise was booked into the Franklin County Jail at 7:40 that evening. Felony child endangerment, the kind of charge that follows a person into every room they ever walk into again for the rest of their life. Patrice texted me the timestamp. I read it once, set the phone face down on the carpet, and looked at my grandson sleeping against my shoulder, his face slack and peaceful, in a way it hadn't been in longer than I wanted to admit to myself. He's got Marianne's forehead, I thought. Always did. I pulled the blanket up around him and turned my attention back to the television, back to the last of the dinosaurs going quiet under all that ash. Some people leave a door open when they walk out on a family. They leave loose ends, unanswered questions, the idea that maybe they can come back someday and talk their way through it again. I've spent 38 years making sure fraudulent claims never got that chance twice. I closed every door on this one myself, locked every window, signed and dated every last page. This file is closed for good. If this story meant something to you tonight, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me down in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one of them, I promise you that. I'll see you on the next one, friends. The quietest kind of love is the kind that pays attention a teacher's email, a paramedic's second glance, a boy picking at his hospital bracelet instead of asking for his stepmother. We get so busy trusting the people closest to us that we forget love also means checking, noticing, staying awake to the small signs. Walter didn't get his family back with anger. He got it back by finally looking closely at what mattered most. A small note for you. This story was written and fictionalized by AI for entertainment purposes, though we hope it still carries a genuine, positive lesson for your life.